Hey guys, what's up? It's Mr. Graves here. I just want to take a second to go over some of the answers to your elections and parties test review for the test that we're going to have on this unit on Tuesday. So we got 15 minutes here before the video will cut off. So let's go ahead and not waste any time and get right into it. So let's start with our very first lesson in this unit, back with the Electoral College. For number one, a pretty basic question here. Just remember, what is the Electoral College? The Electoral College is basically the vote that is used to determine who is going to win presidential elections. You have two different types of votes. So if you go down to number two, what is the difference between the popular vote and the electoral vote? The popular vote is simply you take all the people who vote in the country. Popular meaning people. So you count up every single person who cast a vote in that country. All the total votes cast is what we call the popular vote. So if there are, let's say, 100 million votes cast in the United States, those 100 million votes, that's the popular vote. If Donald Trump won 51% of the popular vote, that means he has 51% of the people in the United States who actually voted for him. That's not the case. Hillary Clinton actually ended up getting more popular votes than Donald Trump. But as we know, Donald Trump won the presidential election, and that is because he got more electoral votes. The electoral vote is determined, if you look at number three, the number of electoral votes for each state is based on the number of senators and the number of members of the House of Representatives your state has. For example, Georgia, we have 16 electoral votes. The reason we have 16 electoral votes is because we have two senators. Every state has two senators. And then that means we have 14 members of the House of Representatives. So if you add our two senators and you add that to our 14 members of the House of Representatives, that gives us 16 congressmen for the state of Georgia, which means we have 16 electoral votes. Every state will have at least 3 electoral votes because every state has at least 2 senators and at least 1 member of the House of Representatives. So for number 4, how many electoral votes does a candidate need to win the presidency? You need 270 electoral votes. So the first candidate to get to 270 electoral votes in the election, that's who wins the presidency. And the way this basically works is, let's say, this is why the popular vote does matter. In each state, whoever wins the popular vote, in this past election we had Donald Trump versus Hillary Clinton. In Georgia, Donald Trump won the popular vote. Georgia's a red state. It's a Republican state. Almost always goes Republican. So since Donald Trump got more popular votes in the state of Georgia, that means all 16 of our state's electoral votes went to Donald Trump. And so the candidates add up all those electoral votes they get from winning each different state, and the first candidate to get to 270 electoral votes, they win. That's why Donald Trump won the presidency, even though he got fewer total votes cast with the popular vote than Hillary Clinton did. Number 5, what is the purpose of the primary election? Think back to about this time last year when you guys were in 8th grade. The primary election season was going on then. Donald Trump was not going against Hillary Clinton yet. He was still going against different Republicans. So the primary election, primary means first. It's the first election where you have a bunch of different Republican candidates that are going against each other to try to decide who is going to be that one Republican that's going to go against one Democrat. And on the other side, you have the Democrats going against each other, Hillary Clinton versus Bernie Sanders, if you remember that, trying to figure out who is going to be that one Democrat. And then once you have the primary election, you will have one Republican left, and you will have one Democrat left. Think of it as like a bracket, like the NCAA tournament, like a bracket. Keep going against each other until there's just one left from each side. And then that brings us to the general election, which is question number 7 here. The general election, that is where you have one Republican who is left over from his side, which would be Donald Trump in this last election, and you have one Democrat, which was Hillary Clinton in this last election. And they will go head-to-head to determine who is going to be the next president. We know Donald Trump won. But let's go back to number 6 real quick. At the national convention, this is where a candidate is actually officially nominated for a political party to run as their candidate for president. So in, I think it was July of last year, there was the Democrat National Convention where Hillary Clinton was officially nominated as the Democratic candidate for president. And that's where the different states officially cast their electoral votes for that candidate. So at the Democrat National Convention, you had states like California saying, we're casting our votes for Hillary Clinton, so on and so forth. And the same thing happened on the Republican side with Donald Trump. Number 8, what is the person chosen to run as a party's candidate in the general election called? They are called the nominee. They are the nominee for that political party. Donald Trump was the Republican nominee for president. Hillary Clinton was the Democratic nominee for president in 2016. When is the general election held? Well, it's held every November. It is held on the first Tuesday after the first Monday of the year, which is kind of weird. So this year was, I believe it was November the 8th, which was the first Tuesday after the first Monday of the month of November. Let's move on to political parties here. Number 10, what is a political party? You should know this by now. A political party is an organized group of people who share similar beliefs. They don't have to be the exact same beliefs, but very similar beliefs, and who are organized to try to influence public policy. They're trying to influence the laws by getting candidates elected to office. That is a political party in a nutshell. Number 11, the two main political parties are Democrats and Republicans. Number 12, what does it mean to be politically independent? That means you don't necessarily belong to either of the two political parties. You are independent. You vote. When you vote independent of whether it's a Democrat or Republican. Sometimes you might vote for Republican, sometimes you might vote for a Democrat. Your decision you make, if you're an independent voter, is based on, in each individual election, who do you think is the best candidate? Sometimes you think it's Republican, sometimes you think Democrat. You just go with who you think. You're not necessarily always voting for Republicans. You're not always voting for Democrats. Number 13, a platform is a political candidate's statement of beliefs. It could be a statement of beliefs for a political party or a political candidate. What are the 5 roles of political parties? Remember, they want to inform, they want to educate, they want to raise money, they want to nominate candidates, they want to create policy, which is basically pass laws that are based on the beliefs that they have. For example, if you're a Republican, you are anti-abortion, so you're trying to pass laws that go against abortion. You're pro-gun, pro-Second Amendment, so you want to try to pass laws that protect a gun owner's right to own their gun, so things like that. So there's quite a few of those there that political parties do, a couple of their roles. Number 15, how are local parties organized? Well, remember, we talked about this early in the union. I brought up this part of our lesson just to remind you guys. So remember, the basic local unit of a political party is a precinct. It's the smallest level of a political party. It's the precinct, which is basically like a neighborhood. Then you go, the next size up would be what we call a ward. A ward is where you take several neighborhoods and kind of put them together, almost like a county in a way. And the ward, the party members in each ward, they select a person to represent the ward at the next level, which would be the county committee. So you have precinct, then you have the ward, then you have the county committee. And each state, we know, is made up of several smaller counties. So the next step up from the county committee is the state party, the state committee. That's what we call a state central committee. And that's where you have several representatives of each county organization. So each of the counties in the state, each of those county committees will then send at least one representative from their county to the state central committee. And then the largest unit of the political party would be the national party. So again, we have precincts, the smallest unit. Then you had the ward. Then you had the county committee. Then you have the state committee. And then the big overall committee, you have the national party. And it all goes in that order. So let's bring it back here to the questions. Number 16, what is the role of the State Central Committee? Well, let's go back over here to our lesson. The State Central Committee right here. Their main job is to, right here, help elect the party's candidates for state government offices. So in our state, in every state, there's a state legislature where there's a state senate, a state house representative. So the job of the state party, the State Central Committee, is to make sure those candidates, if you're a Republican and you are in your Republican State Central Committee, you want to help Republicans get elected to state jobs. Maybe it's for governor, maybe it's for the Georgia Senate, maybe it's for the Georgia House of Representatives, so on and so forth. What is the role of the National Committee? The role of the National Committee is really to organize a national convention like we talked about that they had this past July, where you will elect the party's nominee. So back in July, the Republican National Committee put together the Republican National Convention. Convention is a big meeting of all the important people in that political party. And at the Republican National Convention, they selected Donald Trump as the Republican nominee to run for president. Let's move on to the campaign advertising here. What is a campaign slogan? This is basically a catchy phrase that sums up in a very brief statement the general ideas and beliefs of a political candidate. So Donald Trump's, we know his big slogan was "Make America Great Again." It doesn't give you very many specifics. What it does, though, is it tells you that Donald Trump thinks that there's a lot of things that need to be fixed in the United States, and he's the one that's going to help make America great again and fix all those problems. It doesn't give you all the details, but it gives you a basic idea of what Donald Trump wanted to do, and it's one of those kind of catchy things that people can kind of rally around. Remember, we had several different campaign advertising strategies. You're going to have to be able to identify these. Remember, we did our gallery walk. We talked in detail about these. You're going to have to be able to do this on the test. So remember, a testimonial, this is where someone that's a prominent figure that people would generally know kind of gives a personal story behind why they support that candidate. So let's say if the candidate that's running for president, let's say if it was someone who was a war hero. A testimonial might be someone who served in combat with him, who would talk about all the brave things that candidate did, or maybe the candidate saved his life. You give that personal story about how the candidate saved his life. An endorsement's similar, where you have someone who's prominent, someone that people know, that can influence people, someone that people respect, who comes out and says, I support this candidate. We talked about Herschel Walker, who's a famous University of Georgia running back. He came out during the election and endorsed Donald Trump. The reason that's important, endorsements are important, because there are people who look up to Herschel Walker, who like Herschel Walker, and they might be willing to follow what Herschel Walker says. So candidates really like to get people to endorse them, those famous people, because it can influence voters. Stacking the deck is where you kind of, as a candidate, you stack the deck in your favor. You only mention the positive things that you have going for you. You mention all the really good things you've done, while you completely ignore all the things that might not be so positive, might be considered a negative during your campaign. Plain folks, this is where a candidate kind of gets on the level of the people and talks real plain and kind of talks directly to the people and kind of acts like they're one of you guys, or one of me, just an everyday average American, kind of understands what you're going through and is here to help you because I'm just like you. People respond to that. An attack ad is where you go after your candidate. You go negative. You mention a lot of negative things about your candidate. Donald Trump did this a lot throughout the campaign. Hillary Clinton did it too. But if you remember, Donald Trump would run all those TV commercials where he'd call her Crooked Hillary, and he would say, can you trust a candidate for president who lied to the American people, who deleted all those emails, and who's guilty of treason, so on and so forth, where you go after your candidate. Glittering generalities is like a campaign slogan, make America great again, hope you can believe in, or change you can believe in, which is what Barack Obama used when he was first elected in 2008. Guilt by association, this is where, even though you might not have done something wrong as a candidate, you might be associated with a politician who has done something wrong, and it can kind of hold you back. Coattailing is kind of the opposite of guilt by association, where if you are associated with somebody who did a really good job, then you kind of ride their coattails. You didn't really do a good job yourself, but you were kind of associated with them. So people think since you worked with them, they did a good job, we like them, that means we like you too. So a lot of times vice presidents do this. If a president is really popular, their vice president sometimes runs for president after them, and they can kind of be riding that president's coattails into office. Campaign finance, why do campaigns cost money? Because they are long and they are very big. There's a lot of people that are involved in a campaign, so we're talking hundreds of millions and sometimes billions of dollars. What's the difference between campaign donations and campaign spending? Donations are the money that is actually given to candidates by their supporters, so they can use that to win the election. Campaign spending is once they're given the donations, the spending is how do the candidates go about actually spending that money? They buy TV advertising, do they rent out spaces to give speeches, things like that. Number 22, what is the purpose of campaign finance rules? So we know there's limits to how much you can donate to a campaign. The purpose of that is to limit corruption. What are the differences between a PAC and a super PAC? Remember, PAC stands for Political Action Committee. A PAC is a group of people who support a candidate. Super PAC is the same thing. The big difference here is that there are limits to how much money you can donate to a PAC, and with a super PAC, there are no limits. You can donate as much money as you want to a super PAC. Another difference is that PACs can, the money that's donated to a PAC, that PAC can then give that money to the candidate. A super PAC cannot give any money directly to a candidate. They can actually have no contact with a candidate. Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission, very important case. Who was involved in this case? It was a group called Citizens United, wanted to donate a lot of money. Federal Election Commission is in charge of basically enforcing all the laws. The case is about Citizens United wanted to donate as much money as they wanted to their candidates. The case was decided in 2010 by the Supreme Court, and it was important because it basically said that putting limits on campaign finance, how much money you donate, limits your First Amendment freedom of expression. So it allowed the creation of super PACs.